In this demonstration, we'll take a look at installing Windows. Windows installation is a fairly simple process. You simply proceed through the installation program, making the choices that you want to configure Windows. I have here a new system that has hard drive installed without an operating system. It's been configured to boot from the DVD drive, and I've inserted the Windows XP installation disk in the DVD drive. Let's start up the computer. And because the system is configured to boot off of the DVD, the Windows setup program starts running from the DVD. You'll notice that it installs some initial files that it needs in order to proceed with the setup program. When I get to this point, I have some options. I can press Enter to install, or if I wanted to repair and install, I'd use this option, for instance, if the hard disk had a previous installation of Windows and things were preventing me from starting it normally. Or I could press F3 to quit. Let's just press Enter to proceed with the installation. Now I have a problem. It tells me that setup could not find any hard disk drives installed in my computer, and that I should make sure the drives are installed before I start the setup program. The only option I have now is to press F3 and quit. Problem in this case is that my computer is configured to use hard disks that are not IDE disks. And so in order to install Windows, I must first install a driver so that Windows can recognize the hard disks. The way that I do that is during the installation process. When I get to this point, when the blue screen, you'll see a message on the bottom that says press F6 to install third-party disk drivers. Now you'll notice that it doesn't appear that anything's really happened. The installation keeps going past the F6, but at some point it finally stops and gives me a new option. From here I can press S to specify an additional device driver that I want to use during the installation. Let me press S, and it tells me, okay, insert your disk in the A drive that contains the alternate driver. I have it, so I'm pressing Enter. And now it has searched the A drive to find the disk driver that I need. I'll select the driver, and then Enter to continue. And now I'm back to the option I've seen before, where I can press Enter to start installing Windows. Now here's a new screen. It has actually found a hard disk. So it's telling me, okay, we can keep going with the installation. Now you have to agree to the end user license agreement. So I press F8 to agree and continue. And the next step gives me the ability to choose where I want to install Windows. I currently have a single disk that is unpartitioned. If I were to press Enter, I would install Windows on the disk using the entire disk for Windows. I can use the letter C actually create a partition. So for instance, I could create a partition of 14 gigabytes. Now I have one partition of 14 gigabytes with some unpartitioned space. I can also work with partitions here by deleting partitions. Let me just select the partition, press the letter D, followed by the letter L to delete the partition that I created. Let's just proceed with the installation using the entire disk for Windows. Now I need to choose the file system type, either NTFS or FAT, and to make this short, I'm just going to choose a quick format of NTFS. NTFS is recommended for installing Windows. And now, Windows formats the disk and copies files that it needs for the installation. This portion of the installation is often referred to as the text-based portion of the installation, because I don't really have a GUI interface to work with. I read text, I press keystrokes in order to make my choices and proceed with the installation. After the files are copied, the system will reboot to proceed with the installation. Notice now that I've left the text-based portion of the install, and I've entered what is often called the GUI portion of the installation. I now have access to the mouse, and the screen looks a little more interesting than the simple text-based interface I saw before. Remember that during the text-based installation, I selected the disk where I wanted to install Windows. I partitioned and formatted the disk, and then an initial file copy was performed. Once the system reboots, it starts to configure various portions of Windows. And there'll be some questions that I'll need to answer coming up here. Currently, it's installing devices. You'll notice that as the installation proceeds, the message that is being shown on the right-hand side here changes from time to time. You can think of this as being a marketing message that simply congratulates you on choosing this version of Windows. Many people at this point walk away and find something else to do, and then when they come back, the system will be to a point, such as this, where it's prompting them for some additional information. Now Windows wants to know how I want to configure certain parts of my computer. I can choose regional and language options. I need to type in some kind of a name. Let me just use admin here. I'll leave organization blank. And then I need a product key. In fact, I can't proceed with the installation without entering a product key. Okay, with the product key, I'll click Next. And now it wants a password. I'm going to leave the password blank. And I can set the time zone and the time. I'll just accept the defaults. And now Windows proceeds with additional configuration tasks. And you can see I have a little counter here that tells me about how much time I have left. We're going to speed things up a bit. You'll see just the important stuff to happen. Now it wants me to describe how I'm going to configure my network. I'll choose the typical settings, whether I'm a member of a workgroup or a domain. We don't have a domain, so I'll just choose workgroup. And we're back to copying files. Okay, setup is almost finished here. We're removing temporary files, and now Windows will reboot one last time. And when it restarts, I should see my completed Windows XP installation. So here we are, the installation's complete. At this point, I could add additional hardware, install applications, and move my user settings from any other computers to this computer. If I haven't done so, I might also need to activate Windows, which is contacting the Microsoft Central Headquarters to activate my version of Windows that I'm running here. We've seen a Windows XP installation. Now let's take a look at an installation for Windows Vista. For my Vista installation, I have a similar setup. I have a new computer with a new hard drive that has not yet been partitioned. And I've put the Vista installation disk in the DVD drive and configured the computer to boot from the DVD drive. So let's start up the machine. After the BIOS loads, it boots from the DVD drive. And when this installation starts, you'll see that right off the bat, there really is not a text-based portion of the installation with Windows Vista. Everything now looks pretty much like the GUI installation. So I can choose language, time, format, keyboard input, and then install now. You'll notice that right off the bat, I'm asked for my product key. With Windows Vista, I can actually skip this step now and install without using a product key. However, at some point, I will need to add the product key and activate this copy of Windows so that I can continue to use it after installation. Little warning message, are you sure you want to install without a product key? And I'll say no, because I do not want to enter my product key now. It's not asking me if I want to continue installation, it just asks me if I want to type in a product key. I'll say no. And then because I didn't enter a product key, I need to choose the type of Windows edition that I want to install. Let's just choose Windows Vista Ultimate. And I need to verify, yes, I have selected the edition that I actually purchased. This is the edition I'm going to install. Accept licensing terms, and then choose the installation type. I currently can't do an upgrade. It says in order to do an upgrade installation, I would start the installation from within Windows. In other words, I would boot the computer into a version of Windows, and then I would run the installation program from within Windows in order to do the upgrade. In this case, I can only do a custom installation. The next screen shows me the hard disks where I can install Windows. With our XP installation, we had a problem in that the hard disk was not recognized, and that same problem exists here. I need to first load the driver so that the hard disk is recognized. So I'll click the load driver link, browse to where the driver files are located on the floppy disk. And now I select the driver that I want to load. And after loading the drivers, I can now select the disk where I want to install Windows. If I were to click Next, I would install Windows on the entire disk. If I want to perform custom partitioning, I click the drive options here, and then I could click New, create a new partition. So for instance, a 14 gigabyte partition. I could also select the partition and choose the format type. In this case, I don't have a choice of the file system type. Choosing to format will simply format the partition with NTFS. Let's again just delete the partition, select the unallocated space, and choose Next and allow Windows to partition and format the entire hard drive. So to install Windows, use the installation disk in the DVD drive. Configure the computer to boot from the DVD drive, and the installation process will start automatically. For Windows XP, the first part of the install is referred to as the text-based install. And this is where you load drivers for the disk drivers, you create and format partitions, and the initial file copy begins. After the system reboots, you choose additional configuration information to finalize the installation. Remember that if you cannot see the disk drives, to press F6 to load your drivers during the text-based install. Or in Windows Vista, you can load the drivers during the regular portion of the installation.